I'm going to start with a real life scenario of mine. Imagine, if you will, and can you all hear me? That's usually not a problem for me. I'm going to start with a scenario that was very familiar in my life. It was 5 o'clock at Fox News Channel. There was breaking news, stories to write, deadlines to meet, news and information to gather. And what should I have been doing? Well, I should have been working on the breaking news and writing the stories at my laptop, at my desk in my office, an hour before going on national television to deliver that breaking news. But instead, I would generally be lying in the fetal position on the floor of my office, under my desk, unable to move because of the searing hangover I had from the alcohol and drugs that I had consumed the night before. Somehow I would manage, 30 minutes before the show started, to stand up, make my way down to hair and makeup, get my hair and makeup done, walk onto the set, and as I would sit on the set, I would generally say a prayer, something like this: God, if you get me through this show, I'll never drink again. Well, somehow I would make it through the show an hour later, fooled everybody again, done a pretty good job delivering the news to 1 million or 2 million people. And what do you think I did as soon as I got off work? Did I go home and perhaps contemplate changing my lifestyle? No. I went out and celebrated by getting drunk again. That was my life for nearly 6,000 days. If I wasn't drinking, I was either thinking about a drink or recovering from a drink. It wasn't much of a life at all. It was more like an existence. But I stand before you proud and humbled tonight to say that in 15 days, I will celebrate 11 years without a drink or a drug. And believe you me, if you had known me back then, you would say, that's a miracle, that this woman has not had a drink or a drug in 11 years. I don't take it for granted. Not one moment of it. Being sober is a gift that I gave myself and everyone in my life, and I don't intend to squander it. You know, I was a pretty good girl in high school. I didn't party much, I didn't drink much, it didn't interest me. In fact, it kind of scared me, drinking. I will say that the first time I got drunk, though, was playing quarters in Hilton Head with a bunch of cute boys. And I liked that buzzed feeling I got. Just kind of felt good. Then my next drunk didn't really happen for several years until I got to college. And I was fortunate enough to have been on the swim team here at Westminster, and then I also swam at UNC, where I ended up going to college. And as a member of the UNC swim team, as a freshman, as part of our initiation, the seniors got us drunk. Really, really drunk. So the next time I got drunk, after the first time I got drunk playing quarters, it was after being forced to drink a bottle of peppermint schnapps. Right? Isn't that the worst thing you can imagine, peppermint schnapps? Even now it gives me the willies thinking about it. I was so sick, I vomited for 8 hours after this party, and I was so bad that I had to be dragged out of the party, put into bed. I didn't move for 36 hours. The women's a cappella singing group I was in at UNC, the Loreleis, made me sign a non-drinking pledge because by the time I became a member of that singing group, I'd already had a reputation as a big drinker. Should have known that I was going to be in for a really long slog. I love drinking, and I was great at it. I've always been a super achiever, and drinking was no different for me. I think I finally realized that I was a very high-functioning alcoholic after my 30th birthday, where I'd had, my mother and I basically had the same birthday, and we celebrated our 50th and our 30th together. My mother was very young when she had me, and Dad, you were pretty young too. And at the end of this party, everybody went home at a decent hour because it was a Sunday night when we had this party. And I went out. And I was dumped in my driveway at 3:30 the next morning, totally intoxicated. I don't remember getting home. I do remember, however, waking up the next morning because I had to go be on TV and promptly vomiting as soon as I woke up. As I was cleaning the vomit off of my bedroom carpet, which left a big, nasty red stain, I said, well, I must be a functioning alcoholic. It was almost like a badge of honor for me. My birthday parties now are pretty different. In fact, I celebrated my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I went and had a steak with my dad. Pretty normal, great celebration. I also got together with a group of girls who helped me celebrate my birthday, and one of my friends showed up with a 48-pack of Perrier, which was awesome. She said, you know, I usually show up with bottles of wine, but I thought you would appreciate this Perrier, and I sure did. It was like $50 worth of Perrier. And I was very happy about that. I like to say that I could drink like a man. What does that even mean, drink like a man? As you've probably noticed, I'm not the smallest, most petite woman on the planet, and I could really put it away. I also used to say things like, I don't trust people who don't drink. Just think about that for a minute. I don't trust people who don't drink. That's crazy. There was also a place I used to like to frequent in New York, and you can always tell the quality of the joint by the name of it. It's a place called Hogs and Heifers in New York City. It's a real place. Some of you may have been there. And as I danced on the bar, elegantly I'm sure, at Hogs and Heifers, I looked down and a guy's looking up at me and he said, hey, aren't you the lady from Fox News Channel? And I looked down and I said, well, I'm no lady, but I am on Fox News Channel. I was drunk when I met President Bush. I was drunk when I met then Vice President Cheney. I was in a blackout when I met Joe Biden. I simply don't remember meeting him. Then there was the 8-day trip to Spain that I don't remember taking. I have a vague recollection of checking into my hotel room in Madrid, and then I have a vague recollection of getting kicked out of the pool at this resort in Marbella in the south of France, south of Spain, because I insisted on carrying my alcoholic beverage everywhere I went. And when the guy at the pool said, you can't have it here in the pool, well, of course, I argued with him and I got promptly kicked out. Those are the only two memories I have from that trip. When I got my American Express bill a few weeks later, I said, oh, I went there? I don't remember that. Then there was the time that I OD'd and was found face down on the floor of my kitchen in my apartment in New York City. Thank goodness I was found. I was rushed to the hospital. I don't remember any of this, of course. Rushed to the hospital. They pumped my stomach. The doctor gave me an exam, and as he was discharging me, I guess the next day, he said, you're very lucky to be alive. You think I got sober after that? Nope. Almost dying wasn't enough to get me sober. I drank and drugged for 2.5 more years after that overdose. And perhaps the most shameful of all, being completely wasted at my Westminster 20th reunion. Needless to say, I didn't show up for number 25, though I did make it to number 30, but I've been sober a long time, so it was okay then. I'm telling you all this because when people look at me, they don't see an alcoholic. They don't see an addict. Do you see one when you look at me? Right. It never occurred to me to stop drinking or even try because I could not imagine my life without substances. I thought, my God, I'll be boring. I won't have any fun at all. What will I do with myself if I don't drink or use drugs? Such a glamorous life I was leading, wasn't I? That overdose is pretty glamorous. Booze and drugs were the solution to all my problems. And this is all while having a major TV news career, by the way. None of that was good enough for me. The big job, the nice salary, the beautiful apartment on Central Park, the clothes in the closet, the vacations I don't remember taking. You would think that would have given me a happy life, right? Well, I was dying inside. I didn't even know who I was when I looked in the mirror. That's a pretty terrifying thing. To be seen by a couple million people at a time on television, but not knowing who you are. That's sad. There's not a whole lot of logic with addiction. Let me talk about strawberries for just a minute. Let's say you ate some strawberries and you got violently ill after you ate those strawberries. Would you ever eat strawberries again? No. Some of you have shellfish allergies, right? You don't go near shellfish. Alcohol made me sick almost every time. But so cunning, baffling, and powerful is the disease that I couldn't stop. And frankly, I didn't want to stop. My whole motto in life was, work hard, play hard. I'm a big TV news anchor, yo. I was really just a sad woman, wondering how I had gotten there. There's no logic in this disease, and it is a disease, and probably everybody in this room knows that now. It was characterized as such by the American Medical Association back in the 1950s. And here is the actual definition of addiction, because I think you all should hear it. Addiction is a primary chronic disease of the brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. Without treatment, addiction is progressive and can result in disability or premature death. Yikes. A disease of the mind and the body and the spirit. Addiction invaded me the same way cancer invades people. And believe me when I tell you that it took over absolutely everything in my life, it was a very real thing. It probably should have killed me. I don't know why I didn't die that night in the hospital. I don't know. I guess God decided it wasn't my time to go. As I said a moment ago, most people tell me I don't look like an alcoholic or a cocaine addict, but I am both. I am in remission from my disease. I will never be cured. There's no cure for addiction, but the good news is treatment works. There may be some of you in this room right now who are in treatment, and you know the joys of recovery. And that's the happy part of this story. It's the part where you can turn your life around and start over. I'm not a bad person trying to get good. I'm a sick person who is trying to get better a little bit at a time each and every day. You know, so often people think of alcoholics as old men, and no offense to the older gentlemen in the audience, old men wearing trench coats, clutching a paper bag of whiskey and under a bridge, right? Or like, do you remember that movie 9 to 5? Okay, such a great movie. Peggy the Lush in 9 to 5, remember her? It was like, oh, Peggy, that's the Lush. Like, that's what people, and she gets sober at the end of the movie and nobody recognizes her. That's what people think of when they think of alcoholics. They don't think of people like me. This is what addiction looks like. And this is what recovery looks like. My moment of grace from this disease came on March 14th, 2007. I had ordered a glass of wine at a Greek restaurant up in Manhattan. I was having dinner with a person I didn't know that well. But at that moment, when the glass of wine was set down on the table, it was my moment of grace. Whatever happened in the universe came down and said, Laurie, you do not have to drink this drink. That was my moment. Those of us who are in recovery have what we call that moment of grace, that moment where we know that the jig is up. That was my moment. I looked at the glass of wine and said, I don't have to drink this. This is great. And I didn't drink that glass of wine. And I called the one person I knew in a 12-step program up in Manhattan. And he said, I've been waiting for your call. This is a person I used to get very, very drunk with, and he got sober, and so could I. And that's what he told me. He said, you can do this too. And also, my sister, who's class of 95, who is my greatest love and the mother of the two cutest boys on earth. No, they are the cutest kids in the world. They're way cuter than your kids. Right, Dad? Aren't they the cutest? Robert, who's 10 and a half, and Thomas, who's 7 and a half. And I got sober for those unborn babies because my sister was pregnant with the family's first grandchild when I made my decision to get sober. I thought, I've got a reason to get sober now. I'm going to get clean for this little unborn baby. I had a reason. And that reason is 10 and a half. And his brother is 7 and a half. And I know I will lose that relationship and every other relationship I have in my life if I start drinking again. I'm not giving that up. Life is too good now. My family couldn't have been more supportive. In fact, a few months after I got sober, my mother and I went to Harbor Island in the Bahamas, which if any of you have ever been, you know what a special place it is. It's a little tiny island. And we took a boat out, and I went for a little swim by the side of the boat. And I pulled up a starfish, and I said, Mom, I found a starfish. And she took a picture of me holding it. I tossed it back. I got back in the boat. She put her arms around me, and she said, we have our Laurie back. You're back. Because of that pure moment of joy when I found that starfish. I had been gone for a very long time. And maybe some of this is a little too touchy-feely for some of you, but I can tell you, this thing is about life and death. And if you think it doesn't affect your family, you're wrong. It affects every American family in one way or another. Everyone in this room knows someone who would benefit from recovery, or who is in recovery, or who they might want to talk to about recovery. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just a fact. It affects every family. And that's why I'm here, because too many people are dropping dead, and too many young people are dropping dead. And that's what I want to talk about for the next few minutes. I want to throw a few statistics at you that are sobering, pun intended. Deaths from prescription opioids, like oxycodone, hydrocodone, and methadone, have quadrupled since 1999. There was a little bit of good news. Between 2007 and 2014, overdose deaths of teenagers fell 26%. That was great news. Guess what's happened in the last 2 years? It's up 19%. You all know about the heroin triangle here in Atlanta. And if you don't know what the heroin triangle is, it's about 10 miles from here. It is the subject of the current season of Intervention on A&E, which I highly recommend that you check out sometime. It's Fulton County, it's Cobb County, it's a pretty big triangle area, and it comes very close to where we are tonight at Westminster. It's happening here in Buckhead. It's happening to people you know. It's happening to people I know. It's affecting every family out there. And that's why I urge all of you to pay attention to this, not just to me tonight, but in general, to have open conversations with people you love and care about. Your children, your grandchildren, people you care about this. Because we are in an epidemic, and we have been for the last several years. It costs us a lot. Not only in terms of the sheer number of people who die every year from addiction, which is 113,000, but also because of what it costs our economy. This is not the time to get bored, folks, and think, I think I'll stop listening now. Guess how much addiction costs this country every year? Anyone want to take a guess? No wrong answers. Anyone want to throw a number out? Throw a crazy number out.
$1 trillion.
$1 billion?
$1 trillion.
$1 trillion? You were closer. $600 billion a year. That's lost wages, lost productivity, hospitalization, institutionalization, incarceration. We're locking far too many people up in this country for dime bags of pot. And then there's the health costs. Let's start with wet brain, cancer of the esophagus, heart disease, liver failure, body failure. Companies spend $80 billion a year on addiction. Between 23 and 25 million people are like me. They meet the active criterion for addiction in this country. And yet only 2 million are seeking help. One of the reasons those 21 million other people aren't is because of stigma, right? Stigma and shame and blame. Those words are often attached with addiction, and it's not okay with me, which is why I'm out here and which is why I've been public for the last 7 years, talking to anyone who will listen. Do we shame people with diabetes for eating Skittles? Do we? No, we don't. Do we shame people who are overweight, who continue to eat? No, we don't. Do we shame people who have breast cancer? No, we don't. We shame addicts. And that's not okay with me either. Far more people die of addiction every year than breast cancer, about double or triple the number. But because of the stigma that's attached to the disease, people still don't want to talk about it. There are people sitting here right now who are uncomfortable, and I appreciate that. But we are in an epidemic, and we have to talk about it. And I think that we can learn a lot from the breast cancer movement and from the HIV movement. Look where we were when nobody talked about breast cancer or HIV back in the day. In the 80s, it was, oh, it's a gay man's disease. We can't talk about this. Or breast cancer, that's private. Well, now look at where we are, because people went public. And you had celebrities getting involved. Elizabeth Taylor and Princess Diana with AIDS. And so many celebrities with breast cancer, there are too many to mention. And so we've learned through education, we've learned a lot about those diseases. And we can do the same with addiction too. The disease and the stigma is particularly acute for women. Women are far less likely to raise their hands and say, I need help. I know I was. I was scared to death. And so many times women are the backbone of the families. No offense, guys. But when mom has to go away for help, the family kind of falls apart. So women don't raise their hands and they don't ask for treatment. But the rate of alcohol-related deaths for white women, aged 35 to 54, which is many in this room, has doubled since 1999. And we know that drug overdoses kill more people than car crashes and gun-related deaths combined. Close to 53 people die of opioid overdoses every year. That's 15,000 more than car crashes and 17,000 more than gun deaths. There's been obviously so much focus in the last 2 weeks with the horrendous shooting at Parkland High School in Florida, where 17 innocent people were killed. Guess how many people die every day of addiction? 145. And that's just drugs. If you include alcohol, it's more like 178 people every day. That's like a 737 falling out of the sky every day. That would make news, wouldn't it? If a 737 fell out of the sky every day? That's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about this disease and talk about it frankly. I'm here to also share some of my down and dirty stuff, which I shared with you when I first started speaking, because I think it's important you hear it. We can't sugarcoat things in this world. Addiction is one of them. I'm really proud of the journey I've made the last 11 years. I am happy that I can look in the mirror and see someone I like and respect. I like me now. And I didn't for so many years. I hated myself, which is why I drank and used drugs the way I did. I think part of me probably wanted to die. Now, I've got a lot to live for. And there are also 23 million people in recovery just like me in this country who are sharing their stories of hope and help and strength. You know, the last time I spoke at Westminster was about 15 years ago, and it was with Clark Howard. And I was talking about the news, and he was talking about all things Clark Howard. And it was funny, this was 15 years ago, and I never thought I would be back at Westminster talking about this. I never thought I'd go public with this. It was a deep, dirty, dark, and shameful secret that I kept for so many years. But I decided to go public after my anonymity was broken on the internet, which is a whole other story. I'm grateful because now I have a platform to speak from. I get to come to Westminster and talk to people I care about, people who showed up tonight, people I went to school with, parents I used to see at school, meet the new head of the school. Well, he's new to me. There's a quote I really like from Jung, and it is, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I wish to become." I made a pact with myself 11 years ago that I would become something different. Someone who gets invited to the White House to speak. I still don't know how that happened twice. And under 2 different administrations. I don't know how I get to do the things I get to do. It's a blessing. It is a blessing that I get to come to Westminster and talk about this. And you all are sitting here and you're listening, and I don't know what you're going to do with the information that I give you tonight. You could do nothing with it, but you're listening. And that makes a huge difference. Nothing is more gratifying to me than sharing my message with anyone who will listen, with everyone who will listen. And nothing is more gratifying than simply living life, waking up sober, which is something I have done for 4,004 mornings. I counted. I count every morning I wake up sober, because for me it's a miracle. And for 23 million other people, it's a miracle too. So obviously, what happened to me is a cautionary tale. It's also a tale of hope and help. I hope it's a tale of hope. I hope you walk out of here thinking, okay, she's a happy person. It's also a bit of a call to action. So in my last 30 seconds, I will say this. Please educate yourselves about this disease. Please. It is an epidemic in this country. It's not going anywhere. Please learn all you can about it, because it will affect your family at some point, or it will affect a close friend or a colleague. And the more you know, the better off you'll be. Just like with breast cancer or HIV or autism or any other disease that we educate ourselves on, it feels good to know more, because then you can be a beacon of hope for someone else. Strong and loving family relationships make all the difference. Community support makes all the difference. We can do together what we cannot do apart. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I truly appreciate it. And I think I have time for probably two or three questions. And please don't be afraid. I mean, hey, I talked about how I was drunk when I met a president. You can ask me anything. Yes?
Can you illuminate us on how your efforts to hide this from the people that matter to you? That's a very refined.
Sure. Yes, people do hide this because of their shame. It's a tough one. And if you are in this room and you are struggling with substance use right now, I would ask you to seek help. You're not alone. You can talk to me. There are so many resources out there and available. If a family member is hiding it, is because he or she feels shame about it and probably feels like he or she cannot talk to family about it. I mean, after all, who wants to say, I've got a really bad drug problem? Nobody. But when you do, you start to set yourself free. I just want to encourage people to not keep secrets, because we're only as sick as our secrets. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'm happy to talk to you later. Anyone else? Yes, in the back.
Laurie, welcome back, and welcome back to Laurie.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have you explored or talked about or discussed the connection of depression with addiction and
Yes.
mental illness?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. So often mental illness and addiction go hand in hand. It's called co-occurring disorder. And sometimes it's a chicken or egg thing. Sometimes you don't know if the depression came first, so that was followed by the substance abuse, or if the substance abuse caused the depression. For me, I suffer from both depression and substance abuse. I've been taking an antidepressant for 20 years. It helps. I can't imagine not taking it every day, quite frankly. But you're right to bring that up. And that is something, if a loved one is seeking treatment or someone you know, make sure they get a checkup from the neck up. I didn't coin that phrase. Former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who you may have read about in the news, he's gone on 60 Minutes. His whole family, the Kennedy family, of course, has been touched by addiction, but he's been huge in getting information out about how important mental health is. Get a checkup from the neck up. Very important. When you're taking your children or grandchildren or your spouse or whatever goes to the doctor, have the doctor ask, how you doing up here? How you feeling? Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? I think we might have one more minute. Someone over here? Yes.
What do you think of the notion that, for example, in my family, there's been alcoholism through generations?
Yes.
Can it tend to be passed through families?
It is absolutely passed through families. Yes, it is. There is a very strong genetic component to addiction. I have it on both sides of my family from a long time ago. And we know in science, it's evidence-based, actually, that it does tend to run in families. I also can't blame my genes for everything. A lot of it is the decisions I made over the years. But yes, there is a very strong link to genetics and addiction. And mental illness as well. Did you have a question?
I just had a question on what you would tell, juniors and seniors at Westminster about alcohol and addiction. I know a lot of it you covered.
Yeah.
But specifically for people at that transitional stage.
Absolutely. And I've had the good fortune of talking to some juniors and seniors before they go off to college. And really, I want to talk to the parents more than I want to talk to the kids. Because the parents think or don't want to know. what's going on. But for kids, I would say, you can use me as a cautionary tale if you want. What I tell a lot of kids who are going off to college is that you're about to enter something that is completely wild and off the charts and a little scary. I would also tell them that you can't tell them not to drink because they're going to. It's like telling kids not to have sex. It's just not going to happen. Sorry to tell you that. It's the world we live in, folks. They're going to drink, they're going to have sex, they're probably going to smoke pot or try it. They might try drugs. They're going to. We all did. I would tell them to think through the consequences, that while it's fun right now, it could lead to something like what happened to me. They're going to experiment. It's just the way life goes. But you can talk to them about the consequences of what happens. I think actually the more you push back against your kids, the more they could rebel. Be open. Don't cover your ears, parents. Be open and willing to talk to your kids, even if you think, my kids are great, they would never use drugs or do anything. Yeah, they are. They're using them. And you need to find out. You've got to get information. Speak honestly with them. You can even share your own experience. I did this in school, and it was a bad night for me, and I never tried it again, or whatever. Just be honest. One more question? Sure.
Is there anything anyone could have done to convince you before you came to the conclusion yourself? Or it was impossible?
It was impossible. As I said, the question was, could anything have stopped me from taking the path I took? I don't know. I don't have too many regrets in my life. I've led a kind of an exciting, fun life in recovery and out of recovery. I was so sick and so physically addicted to cocaine and alcohol that nobody could have talked me into getting sober. I don't think anybody could have done anything. My parents did a great job raising me. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. But when you become a slave to a substance or a food that you really like or whatever it is, you know how hard it is to resist it. Well, imagine being actually addicted, like coffee, for example. You get addicted and you can't live without it, and you wouldn't want to live without it. So, long way of saying I don't think anyone could have stopped me, but what I'm really happy about is that I finally woke up and said I'm going to die if I don't change my life right now. So I want to end on an upbeat note, not a sad note. So thank you so much for coming tonight.